Good afternoon, happy Erev Sukkot, and we're continuing to learn the laws of the Sukkah. And we're starting Siman Taf Resh Mem, which is 640. Start right from the beginning. We're going to talk about who is required to sit in the Sukkah. Nashim va'avadim uktanim p'turim min Sukkah. Women, avadim, and children are exempt from sitting in the Sukkah, which we'll soon see why. Tumtum v'androgynous, a tumtum and androgynous, those are people that have ambiguous genitalia, so their sex or gender is not clear. It's unclear if they're a man or a woman, halachically. Chayavim misafik, they have to sit in the sukkah because it's a doubt. Because we learned that a woman is exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah, but a man is required. Someone who is a half eved and a half free person, he is required to sit in the sukkah. Okay, let's see the Mishnah Berurah. So why are women exempt from the sukkah? So mishum dahavala mitzvah seishes man grama v'nashim p'turos. Men and women are required in the Torah in all of the same commandments, except women are exempt. They are not required to fulfill mitzvos which are time-dependent mitzvahs. Sukkah, because it only happens once a year, it's dependent on time, so women do not have to eat in the sukkah, technically. Now that just means they're exempt. But if they choose to eat in the sukkah, that means they get a mitzvah. They get a mitzvah for eating in the sukkah, but they're not required to. Men are required to, women are not required to. Now, what about if they want to make a blessing? The custom is that women make a blessing when they eat in the sukkah. So anytime someone eats in the sukkah and they are having a meal, so tonight during Kiddush it's made, or if you go to have about an egg's volume of food, of mazonos or washing, having cakes or cookies or something like that, something from the 5 grams, you make a bracha of Asher Kedishanu V'Tzav V'Tzivanu Leishe B'Sukkah. Blessed are you who commanded us to sit in the sukkah. So even though women are not required to sit in the sukkah, if they do so, they make the blessing. Others should not make the blessing for them, even if they don't know it. Okay. Okay, fine. Okay, so let us go further. Katan she'enot tzarich le'imo, a child that no longer needs his mother. Shehu keben chamesh keben sheish, who is about 5 or 6. Chayav b'sukkah min divrei sofrim kedei lechancho b'mitzvos. He is required to sit in the sukkah rabbinically, because there's a commandment that one should teach his children. Because we know that a person does not become required to do mitzvos until a boy is 13, until a girl is 12. But that's on a Torah level. One's not required to Torah mitzvahs until he's 12 or 13. However, there's a rabbinic mitzvah that parents have to teach their children. So when is a child required to sit in the sukkah rabbinically, so that he learns about the mitzvah of sukkah? So that's about, the Shulchan Aruch says, when he's 5 or 6. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kol chad kfum chorfe. He says 5 or 6 because every child is different when they can start understanding and appreciating and understanding the meaning of the mitzvah and what we're doing. V'das kam achrona, many rabbis hold that biben chamesh or lamala, from 5 and above, im aviv be'ir she'enot tzarich as kol kach le'imo mechuyev av lechancho b'sukkah afilu im eineno charav. He says, however, let's say a 5 or 6-year-old, he's not so advanced, but his father's in the city, and so since his father's in the city, he really doesn't need his mother anymore. So you should really bring him into the sukkah also, even if he's not that advanced. Lechancho b'mitzvos v'im ein lo av. Let's say a child, God forbid, doesn't have a father. Yesh omrim de'imo bezdin chayav lechancho. Then his mother is required to teach him commandments. Now we're just talking about sukkah now because sukkah is coming, but it's really a mitzvah to teach your kids about all the commandments. And he says if the father, really the technical obligation falls on the father, but if the father is not around or has unfortunately passed away, then the mother is required to, and if the mother's not around, then Bezdin, or the mother and Bezdin, the rabbinical court, or the city as a whole, is required to teach those that don't have someone to teach. And it's forbidden. Right? People think that if someone's a kid, you could tell him to, they mistakenly believe this, that if someone's a kid, you could tell him to do things that are against the Torah because they're not 13 yet. This is not true. It's prohibited to feed a child outside of the sukkah something that requires a sukkah to eat. So you can't have a kid having a sandwich outside of a sukkah. You can't tell him to do that, and you can't force it in his mouth. You're not supposed to teach them improperly how to do the mitzvos. That is something that sometimes people make an error in. Okay, so we will continue hopefully during Chol HaMoed, wishing everyone a Chag Kasher V'Sameach.